Today I'll show you how to replace and insulate your floor in preparation for wet. Bloody hell. Whew. What the hell is that? In preparation for wet underfloor heating. Let's get to it. I'll take you through all the phases of the build, from removing the old timber floors to reusing them under your floor joists as supports for the insulation, which I'll show you how to cut and then lay either OSB 3 or hardwood ply, depending on what you're putting on top of them. Dude, are you not going to subscribe? Come on, that took so much setup. Ugh. Fine. Well, at least watch till the end. Get me my watch hours up so I can get monetized. Ugh. Now that I've finished chasing out all of the walls for my rewire and I've run some of the conduit, I need to hit pause on that project because tomorrow, Monday the 17th of March, I have got 5 sheets of plywood and 5 sheets of 75mm insulation board for insulating under the floor in the kitchen. Before we dive into the video, I think this is worth mentioning. If you're planning on following what I'm doing and copying me, then please watch through all of this video first, because I'm doing this for the first time and there will be important bits of information throughout. So watch all the way through first. I don't want you to go and spend a load of money because I said something in the start of the video that turns out to be untrue at the end. So let's jump into the video and click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Like the video, leave a comment. I appreciate it all. Now, the materials could arrive at any point tomorrow, so I want to be as prepared as possible. And that means I need to get this floor gone. Any tools I can just shift into the living room, but most of this kitchen does need to stay in place because I need the running water. But I can probably take up the floor around the kitchen, then once I've got the insulation down and the plywood on top, then I can move this kitchen out the way and finish removing the rest of the wood. So that's the plan. I need to crack on. Since none of these floorboards are going back down in the same place, I can make my life a lot easier by using the track saw to cut through the tongue and groove so that they're not all going to snap apart when I try and pull them up. And I roughly know what's under this floor, but just in case there was the odd pipe running right up against the floorboard, you're more likely to run into that issue upstairs. I'm going to set the depth of the track saw. I don't need to set it to go through the entire thickness of the floorboard. It only needs to go as deep as the tongue. So that looks to be about 12mm. 10mm. I can set the track saw to 10mm, and then I know there's no risk of me putting the blade all the way through the floorboards. And then I don't really need to be that accurate here. I just need to have the track sit between 2 floorboards. I've finished cutting and I'm going to take it, I think, to here because I know there's a joist here because there is a cut board here and I can see where there are nails. So I know there's a joist there. So I'm going to cut across the boards just beyond there. And that way I'm keeping most of these boards at a really good length to ensure that they're versatile and I can use them in various different projects depending on what I want to use them for eventually. And I can tell pretty instantly that I cut all the way through there because this one, which ends here, sags right down there. And I've got that spot on there. Look, I've got this pretty close up to the joist whilst also avoiding the nails. And this acts as a great starting point as well because it gives me somewhere to lift the first boards. Now, I would imagine some of these boards, they're going to lift quite easily. and some of them are going to be more stubborn. But I would like to preserve the boards, so I'm not just going to rip them out, because that will just snap them. Good morning. It's a new day. The plywood and insulation are here, and I have no food in, no fuel. In fact, my reserve tank of just over 50 miles is on 48.7 miles. And I got about 4 miles to get to Tavistock. We should make it. I've got this down to a T. You can't go wrong with a breakfast muffin and hash brown and a coffee for £4.50 for spoons. Sorts me out for the morning. Not too often, I get fat if I have that every day, but once a week, twice a week, I think so. Come on. Oh, what am I doing? Oh, I'm meant to be getting fuel. Got breakfast muffins on my mind. Do you need to stop so far behind the crossing? You've just passed. That should all be fresh to you. Yeah, you can fit 2 ambulances through there. You don't need to stop. For
Okay, let's go. Simply the best.
Okay, as you saw earlier, I've got all of my materials arrived from Totem Timber, and I've also picked up some replacement floor joists because 3 of them are a bit rotten. Well, 2 of them under the door have rotted out, this one, and the other one, because it's not been secured properly, it has completely twisted over time. Look at that. So I'm going to replace them. But before I lift these 3 joists, I want to make sure that the joist running along the sleeper wall that supports the joists is firmly fixed down, because I'm going to be hammering the underside of these and I don't want to pull the sleeper joist up with them. Right, with this sleeper joist hopefully really securely bedded in now, I can start lifting out the rotten joists. So they're all completely loose on this end. They're fixed down to here. And on the other end, so this whole joist now is free, and you can see now up close the extent to the rot around the doorway where it was poorly sealed off. Look at that. I guess this one is a very similar story. Yeah, just nailed through with 1 nail. That was easy. And then it's also nailed in here. There we go. And then finally this one is going to be the more difficult of the 3 to remove, because it goes right under the brick there. And ideally I do it without pulling all this out, but if I do, I'm just going to have to figure something out, aren't I? So the trouble is I can't really hit from this from this side because it's right up against the wall. So I think what I'm going to have to do is knock this block out. I wonder whether the sensible thing to do here is going to be to just run one alongside here. I think that is going to be more sensible. I was absolutely correct to remove that bit of block there. So I'm going to put my new joist in running all the way alongside. I'm going to keep this one in place. And I'll probably just cut out the rotten bit on the end. Because otherwise it's confusing. You might put a screw in and think it's bedded in. Whereas if you've cut the rot away, you know that you've not hit the joist because you feel nothing. That's going to work just fine. And then, because I've moved this one inwards, I think I'm also going to want to run a secondary one along here against this wall. Otherwise, you're unlikely to stand here, but if something heavy went on there, then the floor's unsupported here. So that's really important to remedy at this stage. So looking at the quality of these boards that came up from the kitchen, they're not worth restoring to be used upstairs or elsewhere. So I am going to reuse them by putting them underneath the joists as supports for the 75mm insulation that goes down. And I'm trying to think ahead here. I'm not going to fix them to the undersides yet. I'm not ready for that. But before I fix down these new joists, I'm going to slide these under the other joists, and it's going to be far easier when I got the extra space. So step one will be to fix down the joists. Step two is to gauge the level of all of the existing joists and see if I need to space anything out before I complete step three, which will be to fix the old floorboards to the underside of the existing joists. And then step four will be to cut the insulation to size and put it in. Ideally, the insulation should be friction fitted into place. Step 5 will be fit all of the plywood, cut it, get that down where I know it's going to go. When I'm fitting kitchens, I use these blocks that I've made. And what I've done is I've drawn a line across them at exactly the same height on every block. I think I've got 7 or 8 of them. And I can use these in tandem with a laser level to gauge the level of a kind of a large expanse of a room. So I've got my laser level here. I've propped it up. I'm going to face it this way and flick it on. And then if I pop one of these down, you can see that it's basically level on this one here. I already spaced this joist underneath. If I were being really picky, it would want to be raised very slightly more. In fact, that's probably easy enough to do. But then what I can do is place these all the way along on each existing joist. I don't know if you can see all of those. And the pattern that's being revealed is that the floor is gradually dropping in height towards this end. Each of these is now spaced so that the laser line, so this one's a 4, this one's a 3, this one's a 3, that one's a 5, that one behind is a 10. If the whole levelling approach needed a rethink. Using spacers hadn't gone to plan, so I decided to start again. I cleared the room, ripped up the ones I'd just painstakingly glued down and made wooden strips to replace them. Much better. Next, I needed to secure the old floorboards to the undersides of the joists. And like much of this project, my approach evolved, often painfully. I made a few time-consuming mistakes, the biggest being that I didn't trim or treat the old boards for woodworm before fitting them underneath. That choice earned me more than a few splinters and made the whole place uninhabitable for 2 days. But we'll get to that later. For now, let's jump forward a month to see how things improve. If nothing else, I'm a man of my word. Or maybe I'm a man of my dad's word. Either way, I did as he said. The old floorboards were treated, ripped to width and trimmed to length. Unlike in the kitchen where the missing joists gave me room for full-length boards, here I had to trim them down so they'd slide beneath the floor. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's jump back in time, back to the kitchen and kind of try and keep it sequential. It was a very long project. 8 months it took, and well, it was even more difficult to edit, so you'll have to bear with me here. I'm trying my best. Buoyed by the prospect of doing something other than crawling around under the floor fixing battens to the joists, I jumped in head first. Or blind, I'm still not sure which. I didn't really think about what I was doing, or in what order I should be doing it. I was just completely winging it. After I'd fixed the old floorboards to the underside of the joists as battens, I started cutting all the insulation to size. I cut full 2.4 metre lengths of 75mm PIR along the board, and unbeknownst to me at the time, that was a really silly way to do it. At that point, I hadn't even entertained the idea of Noggins. I was just being a bit too eager. The problem was the joists weren't parallel, so over that distance the cuts were never going to be accurate. The insulation would end up slightly too wide at one end or too narrow at the other, so it had to be forced into place. It got squished, cracked and messy, but it went down, for the moment at least. It was only now that I thought maybe I should have used Noggins, but rather than take all the insulation out again, I decided I just couldn't be bothered. So I improvised. I came up with a half-lap system for the plywood. Instead of having Noggins to support each edge, I'd cut a half-lap on every board so they could slot together. I was convinced that'd be enough to make it sturdy, and for a while it was. Or at least I convinced myself it was. By the time I got to the living room, I decided I'd do things properly. Once the old floorboards were up, I cleared everything out, rubble, dust, nails, and vacuumed underneath. That made a huge difference later on. I switched materials too, OSB instead of hardwood ply. I wasn't tiling in here, so I didn't need the extra strength. I've had a bit of a think about the orientation of all the boards. And I think I'm going to do it like this. Again, I don't want joins of boards in doorways. So the first one is going to go right up against here, all the way that way. And then what I'll do is I'll trim this one along here so that I've got the joist revealed for the board that goes in here so it can screw down onto something. And I've just remembered I'm going to have to cut away here, aren't I? Because I need to meet this joist in the middle. This time I actually had a plan. I knew I couldn't half-lap OSB. The edges just aren't strong enough. So Noggins it was. I'm just going to mark a line along all of the joists, and then that's the centre line for the Noggins. So my next task is to measure and cut all of the Noggins. I'll just do them for one line first, and then I can mark the centre on each end of each noggin, and that way I can line it up with the mark I just put on the joists. So that is the length of the 6 noggins I need to cut for this run, and I don't see the fact that this house was built 60 years ago as any excuse for not laying your joists square. It really rubs me up the wrong way. The gaps between these 2 joists and these 2 joists differ by almost 30mm at times, and I don't know, it's just really not very hard to cut 3 noggins so that you can put them in between each time you lay a joist, and then all of them are going to be bang on whatever gap you choose, bar the last one, which might be slightly different based on the size of the room. It's not hard. I've got that run of Noggins cut and I've labelled each of them so that I know what goes where. And then I use my trusty combi square and I've set this to exactly half the thickness of the noggin. And that can of course be checked by drawing your line from both sides of the wood. Around and put one there. And that line is in exactly the same place, so it must be in the centre. And when you draw that line, make sure that your line extends right to the edge of the noggin. And personally, I draw it all the way back to the end of the combi square. And what that does is it means you've got a very definitive line that if you needed to trim some off because it was too long, you're not going to lose the line and have to redraw it each time. And with those lines drawn, I've removed the sheet of OSB that I was using to run the pen along to create those lines. And that allows me to transfer that line down to the bottom of the joist. And that's important because it's going to allow me to line up the batten that I fixed to the underside of the joist centrally to the noggins so that there's an overhang on each side of the noggin for the insulation to sit on all the way along the room. So this is where it all starts to come together. By drawing a mark on 60mm, I can then line it up with the line on the joist, and then I can just check that as we go along. That one is 60, perfect. So this one's now ready to be screwed up from beneath. Fixing the battens to the underside of the joist is not very easy at all. And this is why it's really crucial right at the start that you clear everything and you give your floor a good sweep, because you've got more space vertically. And if you drop your screw, you're not constantly hunting for it amongst all the rubble from when the house was built. And also you want to just have a bit of offcut of some sheet material to lie down on, because lying on one joist is not very comfortable. So I've got one screw in here, and the other thing, it's quite difficult to find the centre of the joist unless you kind of get your head right underneath, and even then it's hard to see. Just make sure you're far enough in, and you want a screw on each side of the board. I'm using 4x40mm screws. You get away with 4x30, but I've run out of those. And then you want to repeat that under every single floor joist. So that batten is in and it's screwed in all the way along. And now I've got my noggins, which I've cut to length, labelled and drawn the centre line on each end. So this first one, 362, that goes in here. Seems to be a good length. And then I need to line up the red lines. They're not going to sit directly on here because these are 4x2s and these are CLS 4x2s, so they're smaller. But I can then use my square to check that it's upright. A line here and here on both ends to give me the position to put my joist hanger onto the joist. Trouble is these are designed to be used on a joist that's the same dimensions as the noggin. And they're designed to be used by people who are actually competent at hammering. That's the other problem.
Cutting the insulation was much more structured this time. I was working with 1.2 metre sections across the board instead of those awkward 2.4 metre lengths. Shorter pieces meant less variation from one side to the other. In the kitchen, I'd cut each piece at the same angle it went into the floor, so every new one started with a slanted edge, and the cuts just got worse. This time I kept it square, measured the gap, cut to the widest width, and then trimmed one long edge to match the taper. Everything stayed square, fitted tight, and it was far less frustrating. I refined the cutting too. The track saw only reached about 70mm, so in the kitchen I'd cut as deep as I could, then snap the insulation like plasterboard. It worked, but it was messy and left a ridge on every cut where the edges never sat flat. This time I marked both faces with a roofing square cut from one face, flipped it and met the cut in the middle. It gave a clean edge with no tearing or dust, and everything finally fit the way it should. By this point the living room floor finally made sense. Old floorboards underneath, noggins across, insulation snug in between, and OSB over the top. It was solid and done the way it was supposed to be done to start with. You'd think I'd move on to the underfloor heating at that point, but no. After seeing how well the living room had turned out, I couldn't stop thinking about how I'd done the kitchen. 6 months had passed. That was done back in March, and the kitchen had been acting as a makeshift workspace ever since. The plywood was completely unprotected. Months of cooking oil, dropping tools, and general chaos had left it greasy and dented. Not exactly the surface you want to stick tiles to. So we stripped it all back. Every sheet came up. We cut off the lap joints to leave clean, square edges, and that's when we realised the boards could actually be flipped over, giving us a fresh factory surface to work with.
Okay, so what the next step is to take...
No, just make a mark.
Right.
Of course, this is going to be a bugger to get something to stick to it. That's grease, I assume, isn't it?
Oil.
Was there a reason that you did the boards coming this way?
No, just what seemed to be making the best use of the ply I had. If you think it's better, we can effectively start again with the layout of where the boards are.
How much are these boards? Are they marine?
No, they're like 35 quid.
And why were these ply rather than...
Because for tiling and stuff. Right, okay, so that's good. So we'd be looking at here and there.
Which soles down there?
That's our most complete board. So if we take that one up...
That may be the sort of best bet at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just get that one over there.
Okay, so I'll unscrew this. Take this one out into the living room.
Yep. We'll just turn them over. That'll get rid of your skanky, greasy surface.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea for all of them. Lovely. Oh no, you can't stand on it.
Right, so we want that parallel to a joist.
Yeah.
Should be at the right angle.
Well, we can get this to the right size and shape, can't we?
Yeah. Right, have you got your tape measure?
Yeah. So we want to get it pushed all the way we can that way, yeah?
I think if we push it in, and then we can always recut this edge if we have to. No, we don't want that. We want it...
Oh, square with this?
Square with this.
Well, but with this one.
Right. We just take it from that edge, because he is in pretty tight to there. Okay, so he's going under the wall. It could most probably come out just a little.
Yeah. Okay. Is it worth just checking, just check the gap between here and here, because if they're parallel, then we can do it based off of here to here, can't we?
Well, that's what I was going to do.
So this one, this one is...
And what have you done it? Do it from this edge.
Oh, you hook over.
To this edge.
To which edge? The near?
Yeah.
It's like 408.
8, yeah, that's okay. Because they should be 16-inch centres.
Then few of them are.
No, I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right, so...
Happy?
Yeah. And it wants to be...
Well, mine currently is 69.
Right, 65.
Okay, so...
You want...
I need to move this end to
come
towards
here.
the
sink.
I've got that to 65. That moved nicely there.
So then, what we can do is mark from that corner, which is about 7 millimetres.
Yes, exactly 7.
And then measure it.
60. 59.
Okay, so mark about 59 in. And what was the other one?
No, it'll be 59 in down the other end, won't it? So we should just go right up against this wall.
Yeah.
So we've got this in position and cut square to the wall, and now we've measured to the centre of the joists on each end, so we can cut this board all the way along so it ends on the centre of this joist, ready for the next board to butt up against it. So now we just got to measure and take a notch out of here so we can bring this board up against the one in the living room.
Don't think he's doing anything, is he? Come on. Go on, get your boots on it.
It's marginal here.
A tiny bit.
No, that's really good.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, go on, Kenny. Shoot, sir. Get him, Kenny. Oh, that's it, sir.
So we've got this really nicely in along here after about 10 attempts. But now this needs trimming back so that it sits central to this batten that runs beneath the floor joist, so I can noggin all the way along the edge. So after I stopped filming yesterday, me and my dad spent a bit of time working out exactly how we were going to lay out the rest of the plywood, which I'll cover shortly. But first, I need to get those noggins cut and installed. Yeah. Perfect. They don't get much better than that, do they? It's a new day. The sun is out for the first time in what feels like a month. I think it's the 21st of September today. And yeah, the whole of September's been a washout. But this is really good because I've got some cutting to do on the table saw, which requires the door to be open so I have enough space. The piece of timber in question is this one. It's 3 meters long and it's going to be used to fix the levels of the floor in the kitchen. You might recall right at the beginning of this project, I cut strips from the old floorboards to try and bring the floor level because the floor level drops quite drastically down to this end of the room. I think it's about 15 mil, in fact it's exactly 15 mil lower this end than it is on this end. So the process I'm using to calibrate the floor level is actually extremely simple. All you need is a fairly basic laser level. Now, if you can afford to get one in green, then that shows up much better in bright daylight. So the laser has been sat in this exact place for all of the measurements. That hasn't moved. And that was the mistake I made last time. I think this one was only about 30 quid from Screwfix. It's a Magnuson one. And basically the way this is going to work is I've got a piece of plywood. It's like my testing, my dipstick almost. If I plonk this down, the laser level is here. And then here's the first joist. I picked a joist that was already at the correct height. That's the first important step. And then I plonk this down, and then where that horizontal laser line is, I drew this biro line over the top of it, and then that becomes my datum point. So wherever I move this, that line tells me where I need to bring the floor level to.
Now, I'm quite fortunate that some of the noggins, all the ones along the wall that adjoins the living room, don't use joist hangers. They were just screwed in, and the reason for that is that if you use a joist hanger right up against a wall, you can't put nails into the other side, so then it wouldn't be very strong. So that makes things easier because I can unscrew these noggins and now lift them to the correct height to match the shims that I've added to bring the floor level. So I don't need to plane these noggins like I have the ones just a minute ago. So I'm just bringing them up to the correct height just by feel. And then I can use my trusty bit of plywood. So I can see, yeah, that one there is correct. It's on the line. This one also, that's good. So there. And then I'm not, because it's going to be screwed in, it will move when I screw it. I'm then just going to slide underneath some spacers like I've done here. This one I've screwed back in and got it flush. So just by popping the spacers underneath temporarily means that it won't move out of place. It won't push downwards when I drive the screws in. Because the noggins are being screwed in, you need to offset them. So I'm doing all the ones that are up against the wall first, get them screwed in, because once the noggins that sit inside of them, the offset ones, go in place, I can't get the drill in to drive the screws home. So all of the ones against the wall first, and then all of the offset ones afterwards. And then if you've used the longer spacers, you can just pull them out much more easily and you don't waste them, because they don't come cheap, these. They do not come cheap. So I went around the room and worked out all the low points along each joist using my little plywood dipstick and the laser line. Where a joist was low, I left the spacers sitting there so I could easily see exactly how much it needed to come up. Once I'd measured the whole run, I cut a strip to the thickness of the worst spot, in this case 11mm. Then, using the spacers I'd left on the joists, I wrote on the strip what each section needed to be once it was planed down. When I took the strip over to be planed, I brought the spacers with me. I'd stacked them to the right height and marked that on both sides of the strip, so Duds had a visual guide the whole way along. From there he could plane it all by eye and get each section to exactly the thickness it needed to be. That's perfect, push down, as is that, as is that. Oh, you've outdone yourself here. It's because you knew that the camera was on you. Yep, and then this should all be...
Yeah, just check the transition between the 10 and the 11.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, we're good. Solid.
Have you got a pen there? With this shim planed to the right thickness, I can sort out the height of the noggins because they went in before I realised I needed to redo the heights. So I can just push that one down and draw a line on there. That tells me the height that that end needs to be. And then this end is going to want some planing. This one here is at the right height, whereas this needs sorting. And then this also and this all need to drop by about 1 mil. But I think this end is correct. So it's plane this to the right height, to the height of that. Plane this end to the height of that, and then just get it even in between. So an issue we've come across here is that this joist has quite a bit of twist in it, which means that it ends up not upright. So to demonstrate that, if I put a spirit level across the 3 joists here, the spirit level is flat. This is all nice and flat, but if I move it across to here, then there's quite a lot of play. It's about 2, 3, maybe 4 millimeters. And I can show you how that is by removing the shim here and then placing this so we know it's flat there and we know it's flat there. The spirit level is showing level, and then if you look here you can see that it tapers. So this joist is twisting in this direction, and ideally we would plane something off of here, but this is covered in old rusty nails and that will wreck my planer. So we're going to have to take some off of this edge to bring it down. But it starts here and gets progressively worse. Yeah. One more? Yeah. Looks pretty good. Seems pretty good.
Try the rock test.
Not rocking there. Small bit of rock there, so it might want a bit,
Yeah, coming further back.
smidge more out there.
Oh yes, look at that.
It's nowhere near as bad as it was.
No. Yeah, so it was basically not down the end, but at the start of it.
So the kitchen floor is level. That's great. It just takes away the stress of using a whole load of self-leveling compound much later on. With the structural part of both floors sorted, I could finally do what I should have done right at the start in the kitchen. Spray the woodwormer. It was a bit more awkward this time because everything was already down, but my dad came up with a contraption that actually worked really well. The only downside was how heavy it was on the spray. The room took ages to air out afterwards, so I stayed at my parents' for a couple of nights whilst the house aired. Well, we are just about done in this episode. Unfortunately, I can't give you that before and after shot because, well, my place is a tip. It's an absolute tip. And, I mean, it gets me down at times, but it's sort of the way it is at the moment, where I am trying to live and renovate at the same time. I think I'd like to make a video on that at some point. I'm not sure when that will be. The actual wet underfloor heating install video, that won't be the next video on the channel. That's going to be maybe the one after, because this video is going out tomorrow on Sunday the 16th of November. And I don't think it's realistic to give myself only 2 weeks to get the underfloor heating in and have the video edited. So I'll spend the next 2 weeks getting the underfloor heating in, which actually is here. The whole kit is in here. We've got the pipes. I think this is the manifold. We've got something. There's all sorts of stuff in here. What's this? This is the motorized valve. All sorts of stuff in here. So that's all ready for when I do the floor. but I just need time to get that video filmed and edited. But as I said, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all 600 of you that have subscribed to my channel based on the last video, the OpenReach cable install that I did. I sorted out the internet. It comes in from the house, from the pylon into the house, and then I've routed it through conduit into the cupboard under the stairs. So go check that out if you haven't already. And subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment, ask any questions, and I'll see you in the next one in 2 weeks' time on Sunday. Bye.